What are the best camera settings for doing nature and wildlife photos? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about the best settings that I'm currently using that's working amazing. It's doing a number of things for me. First of all, it's allowing me to be able to take pictures quicker, not having to worry about setting up my camera before taking pictures. It's allowing me to take a lot more consistent pictures, and it's allowing me to capture more amazing pictures. But first of all, who am I? My name is Mike Patterson, and I'm a professional award-winning photographer located here in Western Canada. I've been doing this for over 39 years. I make my living exclusively from photography. I've shot everything in the photography world. And in addition to that, I teach people around the world how to get more amazing pictures. And I own a photo lab where I print for beginners to experts. So I do a lot in photography. It's my job and it's my hobby, and I like to share with you how to get better pictures. But before we get into the video, please click on the subscribe button down below for my channel. Click on the bell notification so you're notified when I put up a new video, and click on the like button for this video. Now let's get into it. Before we get started though, word of warning. Whenever I or anybody tells you to change settings on your camera, be very, very, very careful. Make sure you're writing down what you're changing. Make sure you're writing down why you're changing it, because just don't change it because somebody told you. Figure out the why, or get them to tell you the why, and make sure you know how to get back to the original settings. If you should happen to make a mistake, understand that you can go in and you can hit factory reset button, reset all functions, reset menu, whatever it is, to get you back to the way your camera was manufactured the day you bought it. All the settings will be back to where it was, and you can go from there. But I recommend knowing why you're changing stuff and knowing how to get back to those settings. Now, we're going to talk about on this camera, which is a Canon 5D Mark IV, but this will work on mirrorless cameras. It'll work on DSLR cameras. It will work on crop sensor cameras. It'll work on full frame sensor cameras. It'll work on everything. We're also going to talk specifically today about the Sigma 150-600 lens, but it'll work on any telephoto lens, a wide angle lens, whatever lens. But today specifically, we're talking about wildlife photos. Other thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how to set a custom shooting mode on your camera. On the 5D Mark IV, we actually have 3 custom shooting modes. Other cameras, you may have 1. I've heard rumors that manufacturers are getting rid of the custom modes. I really hope they don't. It's really something really simple. They don't even need it on the dial. They could have 1 custom mode and then index a menu at the back to set up additional ones. But I really think it's not good that they're getting rid of it. I use it a lot, especially for me, because I can set up for wildlife photos in 1 custom setting and doing copy work in another. And it just by changing your dial, it'll change all your camera settings. So let's get into it. How do I like to shoot my wildlife pictures? So I like to set it up so I'm on manual exposure. Now, before you start worrying, oh manual, no, I like to set it up in manual with a little addition to that. So first of all, turn your camera to manual, set up your shutter speed so that it works for the lens you have. With this lens, which when I crank it all the way out, it's a 600mm lens, I like to shoot at 1/640th of a second. Because I know with the image stabilizing of this lens, and without me either hand holding it or shooting on a tripod, 1/640th of a second is perfect for me. You may want to go faster if you find that 1, your subjects are moving in the picture, or 2, that you're not able to hold that shutter speed perfectly still. Or you may want to use a tripod or a monopod for that. But I've found 1/640th of a second works perfect. The next, I like to set my aperture. Now, I've talked about this in other videos about all lenses and cameras have the sweet spot of apertures. This lens, this exact lens, put on one of my Canon 70Ds. If I shoot at f8 or f9, it's perfect. On my 5D Mark IVs, I have been finding at 6.3, it is perfect. Now, I've set it up on this camera at 6.3. So, shutter speed, 1/640th of a second. My aperture, 6.3. Now, I set my ISO to auto ISO. What that allows is the camera to change the ISO so that it sets the correct exposure. And in most shooting situations that I shoot in, that ISO is enough to make sure that my pictures are in focus and that they're not overexposed or underexposed. And it just works perfect for that. Again, you may want to change it. You may find that this a setting in here doesn't quite work for you, but this is what I find has been working amazing for me. So you've set your ISO at auto. Now, in your camera, you can also go into your menu and you can set the range of your ISO. I don't like shooting at the ultra high range because I find my pictures are too grainy. So I've changed my ISO range to go from 100 up to 12,800 ISO. With this camera, with this lens, that ISO range works perfect for me. Now, I understand and I know that at a certain point, it's going to look a little grainier than it did at 100. I understand that. But at the same time, if I'm out shooting at 100 ISO is going to suck if my pictures are blurry, if my subject is moving or whatever. So I find that the range 100 to 12,800 ISO is a perfect ISO. So that's how I set up my camera itself. Now, here's where we get into a bit of a problem. Is that once you've set these settings, if you use the dial either on top of your camera or the control dial at the back of your camera, you can still change those settings. And when you're shooting wildlife, they tend to get bumped and changed often. And I hate that. You're walking along, you see a subject, you pull your camera out, you hit the button, and you realize that it's blurry. Why? Oh, I hit the wrong button and I moved this or I bumped it or whatever. So I go into my settings and I turn off this dial on the top as well as the command or control dial at the back. And I shut them off so that it will not adjust anything on my camera. Now, again, I'm setting this up for one thing. And when I'm done, we're going to go back and set it up so that you can use it a different way. But we're going to leave the setting programmed into a custom function. So don't panic quite yet. So once you've shut this off, it will not allow your camera to change the settings just by rotating these dials. And that will save you a lot of headaches. That'll save you a lot of programming problems with it. I then like to go in and I like to save all these settings to my custom function setting. And I save it all to my custom function 1 and I make sure everything's working there and I make sure all these settings are set up there. And then I recommend strongly you go out and try the different settings now. You go out and you see that you cannot control this, by using it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't change it. You can still change it on the control screen at the back. You can go in and you can still adjust your shutter speed. You can still adjust your aperture. You can still change things. It's just going to stop you from changing things by mistake. Next thing. With this lens specifically, I like to set it on manual with the override ability. So that way when the camera focuses, I can still tweak it if I want to. That's the first thing. The second thing I like to do is I like to shut off the shutter button from doing any focusing and only use the back focus button. By using the back focus button, it allows me actually to manually focus this lens, if you would. I can aim at a subject, I can focus it by using the back focus button, and then I can move it around and everything, and the camera will not recompose, or should I say refocus the picture on me. It works wonderful for that. It works perfect for that. And it is, well, in my opinion, the best setting to use when I'm using this lens because it gives me the ability to focus it and then change things around, hit the button again and it refocuses. It just gives me so many different settings. Now, after all this is saved into your camera, into your custom functions, you've got it all saved, you know where it is. Then what I like to do is I like to go into the custom setting and I like to tell it to not auto update. Because you don't want to change something and then it auto updates it. So when you shut your camera off and turn it back on, it goes back to the last setting you had it. You always want it to go to the setting that you've programmed originally. I hope that makes sense. So turn off the auto update function. Now, you got it all saved. You got everything set up the way you want it to. You've got it all ready to go. So custom function, whatever it is on mine, it's number 1, is all set up. Now you want to go back to manual, shutter priority, aperture priority, program, whichever one of those modes, and you want to turn back on this dial, and you want to turn back on this dial, and you want to take your ISO and put it back to a manual ISO. That way, when you go to program mode, your camera is going to function as it did before. When you go to custom function, all the new settings will be in there. And believe me, these settings work amazing, fantastic, fabulous, because it allows you to take your camera out of the bag, custom function 1, and take a picture instantly. Now, let's talk about one other function or feature that you can use on your camera with these settings, and that is the exposure compensation. What is exposure compensation? Well, exposure compensation allows you to set the camera so that it's making your photos lighter or darker than where it thinks it should be. A good example, birds on the water. Generally, birds on water tend to come out really bright. The water's dark, but the birds are overexposed. By using exposure compensation, you'll be able to dial it down so that the birds are darker, so that the birds are not blown out. Exposure compensation works wonderful. So how do you use it with this setting? Well, it's easy. You hit your exposure compensation button on your camera. It'll be in different places on different cameras. And then you use, well, either the top dial or the control dial at the back to adjust it. Now, earlier I said that we had shut these dials off. The good news is, using that button, the dial is still on. So you can hit the button, you can change it, and it works perfect for doing that. Now, just beware, if you set your exposure compensation to the plus or to the minus, remember you've done that, and remember to set it back to 0. Some cameras automatically set it back to 0 when you turn it on and off. Most cameras will hold it forever. So make sure you're resetting it. Just the other day, somebody came in with their camera. They had it set to 2.5 stops or 2.25 stops underexposed, and they couldn't figure out why their pictures were so bad. And that's what it was. It had been like that for 2 months. So make sure you're setting that back. But those settings will allow you to take amazing pictures really fast with the least number of mistakes. And it works great, wonderful, fantastic. So if you want to try something, I strongly suggest those settings. It works great. It'll help you to get better pictures, to be more consistent. And, well, hopefully we'll get you some award-winning photos as well. So have yourself a great day. We'll talk to you next time. Get out there and take some amazing pictures. Bye-bye now.